Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Today is a bit of a different thing. So, as I've been going through my model career, 3D printing, all that kind of stuff, fun stuff, you meet people along the way that are also in the hobby. And one of the favorite people that I work with a lot is Joe Hudson. He's the author of Modeling Military Figures. You guys have seen me talk about this book before and kind of show off a little bit. But I had the opportunity to sit down with Joe for about 30 minutes and just chat about paint, applying the 3D models, his interest in the hobby. And that's what today's video is. You guys are going to get to see that sit down between me and him as we talk about painting and all that kind of stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy. Let's hop over and let's take a look at what he had to say. Painting is kind of one of the core things where you go, where you're teaching, where you went with your book. What got you into painting? What was the driving force that started you into models and started you into painting?
I've always enjoyed building model tanks, but I wasn't always, that great of a tank builder. So I always wanted to do the figures that went with it, and I always thought the figures would tell more of a story.
Okay.
So once I started doing the figures, I just wanted to get better at doing the figures, and then I kind of put the tank modeling to the side and just tried to hone my craft just doing the figures.
So one of the pictures that you've always shared with me that always kind of pushes you to get a little bit better was that patent figure that you did. What's the whole story behind the patent figure?
That was one of the first figures I ever painted. And I thought I was really good. I took the toothpicks and painted them white, took the toothpicks and painted a dot of black on the eye, And if you look at it now, you can see how much I've evolved.
Yeah.
But I keep it on my desk to show that you can always improve. People are like, well, I can't paint. Well, no, I couldn't paint either. So you're not going to paint until you practice. Just like anything, you got to keep painting. And if you mess up, you just keep painting. And I've always been one of those that people say, well, I painted this and I stripped it 3 times. I never strip it. I just paint it, move on to the next one, because you'll spend all day or all your life trying to fix the one and never get to the number 2. So.
Yeah, because number 2, you could figure out what you're doing wrong to number 1 and be able to go fix it. So I'm one of those. I do strip the models, but we all know how expensive Warhammer is. That's why I strip the model and start over, is just the cost of it. But as you've kind of taken the journey, I know we were talking about it earlier, you started out with the tanks, you started out learning from a gentleman that was painting with oils.
Right.
So here, let's dive into this question. Right now, what's your favorite method of paint?
Acrylics.
Acrylics
I paint with acrylics. And the reason I paint with acrylics is the guy who taught me painting in oils. You actually paint an undercoat with acrylic. Usually it's an acrylic, or it could be an enamel, but mainly it was acrylic. So I just got tired of painting the figures twice, because I would try to paint it really nice in the acrylic, and then I would put the oil paints to do all my oil painting. But I've actually spent time to paint the figure twice because everything was base coated with the acrylic. So I just kind of wanted to skip a step.
Yeah, because I know when my dad started taking me into paints, he always had me working with enamels. Mm-hmm. I hated cleaning those brushes much.
I could never do it. So many brush strokes.
Yeah. So and that's why I've joined the acrylic crew. I like the acrylics, and I've even actually in a few places pulled in watercolors.
Yeah, I've seen some people use those
just for weird
effects.
The watercolors come in really cool for that. So painting the figures, of course, and you guys, if you've watched the channel, you saw where I've talked about his book before, Modeling Military Figures. If you are looking for a paint guide, check this book out. Go out there. It'll be available on Amazon here in April.
Right.
Some places, Mega Hobby, Mark Twain Hobby, their online stores are already selling it. So definitely get out there and check this book out, because while, again, I know I did a video on this before, this is focused in World War II military figures. Yes. But honestly, it applies to anything military.
Right.
If you're doing anything like Warhammer, the Imperial Guard, the Acadian Guard, look familiar. So it's the same concepts taken into other realms. I've even mentioned, I think, Civil War figures. It's not that far off from a Civil War figure.
It's the same style, but it's just different colors.
Yep. And, okay, You said colors. Here's the great question: your favorite color brand?
Well,
I know it's a loaded gun question.
I have different colors that I like, but recently I've been using a lot of AK3 generation for the book.
Right.
But recently in my new style, I'm using Monument Hobbies, and I'm really enjoying the colors of Monument.
And that's the Monument Hobby Pro Acro line, right?
Yes, the Pro Acro. And I found they brush on really well, but what I really like about them, they airbrush.
Yeah.
They airbrush really nice.
Honestly, you don't even really need to dilute them that much. They're actually that great of quality.
Yeah, and the pigments are really good. It just takes a little bit of, I use a little bit of retarder, a little bit of thinner. You know, it's usually like 2 to 3 drops of thinner reducer to 1 or 2 drops of paint, and it works beautiful. It paints really well and covers real good. But my new style now that I'm painting a lot of larger scale that you're producing. And
so, favorite color of the Monument Hobby line. I know what mine is.
I know yours is a good metal.
I love the dark silver.
Right.
That one is for ship design, anything that just lays down so great. If you're doing like pipes or anything like that, it just lays down wonderfully. But what is your favorite one from that line?
Because I'm using a whole lot of different colors. There's, I may be off on the name, but it's a gray black. They have a coal black, but then there's I want to say it's either, it might be called blue black.
I think that is.
And I really like that because it's not as dark where I can add shadows to it and then I can go up with highlights. But it's just a good color, and it also mixes well into some of the other colors, like on the one bus that we're working on in the figure. I was able to mix it into some of that color and darken it to a middle tone, and then I can use that color in for the shadows, and it's been really nice.
Yeah, that blue black is really a great color because I've been using it on some of my Warhammer figures that are the McCrag blue, and it just gives a great undershadow color for them that works really well with the layering method.
But when we were talking about it, I don't know why I forgot my actual favorite color, or the one I use the most, is tan flesh.
Tan flesh, yep.
That's my base color for
anything
organic. All my flesh, yeah.
Awesome.
And then the new Signature series has some really nice purples.
I don't think I've gotten to play with the Signature series
They're real
yet.
deep in aquas, and they have a beige red, which I haven't used yet, but I've got a few figures coming up that I'm going.
I wonder how well that would work on like the Agron figure that I have for that demon kind of flesh. I wonder how well that one would work. I don't have that one. Oh well. So Monument Hobbies, AK.
Scale 75 is good. When I first started, I was using a lot of Vallejos. And Vallejos I still use a lot of. And Andrea has a really good blue sets because somebody just starting, you can use their blue, and it has 6 colors for base color highlights and all, but I never use them straight in order, I mix them and stuff. But what I like about that is, especially when I was doing Napoleonics, you want that dark blue without a sheen, and so those were really good.
So, favorite primer?
My favorite primer is not a primer. I've used all kind of different primers, but it all comes back to, I take Tamiya XF19 Sky Gray, and I airbrush it on everything I do.
And guys, just so you know, everything we're talking about is in this book. So one thing I do want to get right at this point is, where can they find your work? Where can they find and follow you on social media and different things like that?
I'm on.
I know you're on Instagram,
and I have a page on Facebook, and I'm always one of those that I don't even know the name of it. I made a page so that my wife could show people. She wanted a place to show, so it's actually Joe's Historical and Fantasy World of Miniatures.
And your tag on Instagram is
Highlander 242.
242. So guys, go out in there and give him a follow, especially if you want to see more painting techniques. which hopefully we'll be doing some painting together.
Yep.
Is kind of the plan
Online.
to the channel. In basically the same mode, you guys will see us and our desk, and he'll probably be teaching me because he knows better than me.
But I'm painting good prints.
Yes. So it's kind of one of those things. You guys will see both of us working together on making prints and models, because a lot of times I'll print it, he paints it. You paint mostly the organic stuff.
Right.
Like the starships and stuff, that's me, guys. That's all me.
That's not me.
That doesn't interest him, which I don't blame you. It can get very monotonous with the starships. So
different techniques and everything else.
Different techniques, and and that's a great point. Like, I find mechanical very easy. I relish mechanical. And you brought up that tank story, that the tanks just weren't coming out well.
Right.
And that's always a drawback for me, because I want that tank commander sitting out of the top of the tank pointing, but that was always the part of the model that looked worse for me. Was I could never get that figure to look right. And that's where the book is really a great reference point of making that figure pull into, if you're like me that can do mechanical really well, that this teaches you how to make that organic component join back in. And I know for you, organic is more fun.
Yeah.
It's more interesting.
To me, it's like you're bringing something to life.
Yep.
Where, I have nothing against tanks and airplanes, but the average person, if I brought my wife in and my wife, I'm just using her as an example because she's pretty up to date on all of that stuff. But if you put in 5 Shermans and somebody put, 1,000 hours on one with all this photo etch, and another one just built it straight out of the box, and you brought the average person, they look at it and they say, there's two tanks.
Yeah.
But if you put a figure, it could be a MP, or it could be a Spider-Man, it will appeal to somebody who can relate to, they see,
Well, that was one of the sections of the book that really was one of the favorite ones that I saw that you did, was the MPs with the Jeep.
Right.
That was one of my favorite, because you brought to life the Jeep, and I know it's in here somewhere, but guess what? You have to go buy the book to see it. But you did the organic with the MPs, but you also brought the Willie Jeep to life with the bottles in the back and all the different crates and just the terrain. And I know the Willie was really just more a diorama piece where the central focus was your figures. But just even your work on the Jeep, I mean, that was just deliberately ornate. And,
thanks.
And really kind of just one of my favorite. Honestly, the Jeep one is my favorite. I'm going to straight out say it. Even with the building with the bricks and the German soldiers taking the propaganda photos, I mean, that just stood out with all the detail. Not just the detail to the troopers, but also the detail of the brickwork and everything that you took into it. Just really popped. But it didn't detract from the focus was the figures.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a really cool piece to bring into effect.
Well, see, I don't know any difference. So like when I paint those, I'm painting them as I paint a figure. I try to put a highlight and a shadow on them, just like, so I mean, I kind of approach it the same way. There's people that use a whole lot different techniques and all, but if you look in the book, my friend and I, who started years and years ago, Rick Hill, it's funny, I sent him a book and I signed it to him, and I was like, who would have thought, him and I, that I would have wrote a book, because we used to sit for hours and look at other people's books and flyers and, thinking, because when we first started painting figures, the way we got our figures is we painted it black, and then we took a color called polyester desert pink, and we dry brushed it all over the face. So you got highlights and you got the shadows, but we also got burnt figures. They look like burnt figures. So we said, well, instead of using black, let's use brown. And they looked a little better, but that was how we originally started. And then, of course, I told you I got the painting lessons from Bob. But when I did the book, I did it the way I wanted, because we didn't have the internet and all back in the day. I did it for the way I wanted a book, where if you've never opened a model up, it shows you how to cut it off the sprue, how to clean it, how to assemble it, how to putty it, how to use any photo etch, It was just, I wanted to walk somebody who'd never done it through. And I keep everything simple. I don't have 5 colors or 6 colors blend. It's real easy. And my wife described me as a blue collar painter. I'm not the Picasso, the best kind of painter. I'm not the worst kind of painter. I'm the guy that anybody who wants to paint like me could do this way.
Well, and it's one of those things, you and I first encountered each other because of miniature market.
Yeah.
You were teaching your first painting class.
Yep.
And my wife convinced me to go just for kind of a fun afternoon outing, and that now we're just getting in trouble every day together.
Exactly. Yeah, so, daily chats.
Yep. New models, all kinds of stuff coming out. So if you had someone that had just bought your book, just bought their first model kit, what word of advice would you give them?
Well, if you were going to start, the first thing I would invest in a good figure. You don't have to spend out. Tamiya's making a lot of really nice, I guess they were 3D and they're printed now, but they're really good quality figures. Or, get a 3D print, but something that you want to paint. The second thing is good paintbrushes. And I use Scale 75 and Zim paintbrushes. Scale 75 has 2 that I like to use, but Zim has so many that I use all the time.
Well, and you have a Tamiya one too. That's
the Tamiya. And then the Tamiya Pro.
It's the Pro 2, isn't it?
Pro 2, and I'm not exactly sure, but it's the real fine point and the one above it.
If you're curious about that brush, guys, link will be down in the description below for the Tamiya, the Zim, and basically everything we're talking about. There will be links down in the description for the stuff down below as well. But
yeah, I mean, good paintbrushes. You don't have to go hog wild on paint.
I would suggest just buying like a pack. Like you could buy a flesh kit, and even like I mentioned in the book, you could buy a flesh set, and the dark shadow red may be perfect to use for a British beret.
Yep.
So you can use all the different colors in it, but it gives you a good guideline. Or if you get the book, I use basically 3 or 4 colors to paint the flesh, so you could just buy 3 or 4 colors.
Because AK is really good about those color sets.
Yeah.
Especially like their white. They have a whole kit that's built around white.
Yep.
I mean, it is amazing what you see, how whites and grays all come together and pull into that. So AK is really good for their starter kits, because one of those kits of like 6 or 7 or what, $24?
24,
roughly.
Yeah, somewhere in that general area.
They're really good. Vallejo is really good to start off. They have really good, especially if you're doing like World War II stuff like that.
Right.
They have really good oriented kits for those specific, like American World War II and different things like that are really great for start off.
And Scale 75 actually has for on the cover of the book, this jacket, they actually sell a kit of colors that is just designed for that color of jacket. So.
Now, I know you're AK Scale 75. What's your opinion of Citadel?
I never really used many of them, but I have to say, because you had talked about Citadel so much and blah blah blah, I bought a bottle of it, and I actually my basic paint mixture changed by using one of the colors, and I couldn't tell you what color it is, but you probably know. So
the snakebite leather?
No, it's for the flesh. Cadmium.
The Cadian flesh.
Yes.
Yep.
And
that one is a great
which is
one.
really great. So that is now incorporated into how I do my miniatures. Now my larger scale is a different. I use the monument paints, but the 35th scale and smaller is when I use the color.
I know.
We've talked about it. Null and Oil from Citadel is really great. It used to be really good until they changed the formula recently.
Yeah, I haven't bought any new stuff.
I haven't needed new stuff either. I bought a new bottle and gave it a try, and it just took more application than it used to for me. But I'm really kind of curious. We'll have that talk later about when paint manufacturers change what was good, because it happens a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Citadel, they used to have dropper bottles. Now they're in the little pots that most of us dislike. Dropper bottles are great to a point as well. Sometimes they're annoying too. and if you're gonna get started into painting, one of the most important tools, and Joe taught me this, get a wet palette.
Yes.
You will save yourself so much paint by using a wet palette, and red grass is the one that you use,
Yes,
right?
yes. I use the extra large
Yep.
studio one, I believe it's called.
Yep. So definitely invest in that. What other really good tool would they need to be starting out? Good pair of snippers.
Good snippers. Redgrass has great set of snippers. They're expensive, but I mean they cut plastic like butter. I mean, it keeps the cleanup to a minimum.
An X-Acto knife probably.
You
for
definitely have
cleanup.
an X-Acto knife.
Now I use a mold line remover more than I use an X-Acto knife, but that's
I
just
use-
because me and sharp objects don't get along. That's where the mold line remover. I don't cut my hand as much. That's why I like the mold line remover.
And if you are using an X-Acto knife, I use the back of the blade and do the
Yep.
scraping. You know.
And always cut away from yourself. You see it a lot of people. People are scraping towards themselves. I try to scrape away so I don't, stab myself. But some people, they just need some models. You just have to cut inward.
I'm a to-me type of guy and thumb on it, and I have cut my thumbs a lot. So
Well, and
it's not recommended.
what I've learned about that is a thimble.
Yeah.
I put a thimble on my thumb. That way I'm cutting into the thimble and not cutting myself. So it is a really kind of, while it's for sewing, it has paid off for me.
I've never tried it.
It's worth a shot.
But I do have a thing too, a word of warning. When I paint, I like to paint up close. And when I'm painting here, whatever, I like to put the paintbrush in my mouth and I'll do this. But sometimes when I'm scraping, I forget and I put the knife in my mouth, and one of these times I forgot about it and I said, oh, it's metal, and I opened my mouth instead of taking it, and it went straight down into the leg. So if you ever get a good cut like that, a little bit of super glue will take care
Take
of it.
care of that.
But I don't suggest putting your knives in your mouth.
Magnifiers, especially if you want to do.
Optivisors. And the I always started with the Optivisor, but then you gave me a set of the
I gave you I think it's Yogashi.
yeah, the glasses with the light, and that really helps.
The light helps a ton.
When you're really up close.
Because a lot of times when you're painting, you want to try to have the paint like you're coming from a light source, so you're actually getting shadows and everything. And what tends to happen is when you bring it in close, you're not seeing your light.
You're blocking this.
This actually has a light on there, so you actually retain your shadows as you pull it in closer and are magnifying. But the other cool thing about the Yogishi, I think they're Yogishi. Link for this will be down in the description down below. But it has 5 sets of lenses that are strong. Each one is stronger than the other. You just pop it off and pop it on. And what I like about it is I can have that on, and then I can put my glasses on.
Right.
So it's not It's not something sitting on it. I have the magnifier sitting, and my glasses sit on top of it. So I've got everything I need because I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in the same boat I am. I can't see when it gets that close.
I can't even see us here without the glasses. So.
Magnifiers can be really important, especially if you're doing when you're going down to 28 and 35 millimeter.
Unfortunately, when I'm painting a head this big, I still got the glasses on.
A lot of times you see me, especially if I'm doing a starship, I don't have it on, unless I'm doing something really, really detailed. But it's definitely a good tool to have, especially if you want to get into miniature. Now, if you're doing like 170, 148 tanks or something, you probably don't need them to start, but it does come in really handy, especially if you're really trying to pull into that.
My thing is when I'm airbrushing, even though it's away, sometimes I have to get in, and so that's why I always have it on regardless.
Speaking of airbrushes, I think we both agree the Sotar 2020
that's my favorite.
is a big hit. But if you're just getting into the hobby, I recommend starting off with a master, because you can get a master and a compressor and 2 airbrushes for like $130 to really kind of start out and learn if it's something that you want. Because there's some people, they just don't want to airbrush. They want it.
Everybody's like, I don't want to clean it.
Well, basically, you're breaking me of the habit of I would avoid airbrushing because I didn't want to have to do all the work on the airbrush. But now I'm figuring out it's just like dipping my brush in the thing. It takes a couple moments, clean it out, and move on.
The one thing I do is I used to think I had to fill the cup up no matter what I was doing, I had to mix up enough to fill the cup up. Now, when I paint, it's 1 or 2 drops of paint, and I'm working on a 12-inch figure, and I probably used a total, just for the base coat, probably, 8 or 9 drops of paint with the drop, because it's so thin.
Yep.
You're just airbrushing and it covers, and then I'll go back in with shadows and highlights and add more. But before, I would have filled up a 2 or 3 cups of this, and it would be so thick,
And then you've got the excess you got to deal with.
Exactly.
And all that. See,
and then you have to really clean your airbrush, because you've got a ton of. Now, you 1 or 2 drops, you can just, when you finish, you just squirt a little bit of thinner in it, blow it out, and then you can move to the next color.
That's kind of the difference between the ship models. I'm figuring out I use the Badger 105 when I'm doing a lot of the ship.
Right.
It's got a bigger pot, but I also use empty dropper bottles, and I'll mix the paint in the dropper bottle, and then I'll keep filling my airbrush as I go, because I need a larger batch, because I'm going down doing an entire ship in a flat surface, because those ships are like 1/1000. They're big. Mm-hmm. So that's why the Badger 105 has kind of become my best friend. Because it holds more than the Sotar. The Sotar is meant for detail. The Badger 105 is meant for coverage.
Yeah, my workhorse for if I was going to do a tank and stuff is the Evolution. I've got an Evolution harder Steinbeck, I believe it's called. Okay. And it's an Evolution. It's a Germany airbrush, but it came with 2 different sized needles, and it really is. It's really a good. I've tried to do some detail work. I can't really, and it's probably just user error, but I just can't get it as well as I do with the Sotar. And the Sotar I've learned to manage, and I like on the Sotar it's got the trigger brake on the back, so you're not.
Did you install the coupler with the pressure as well? I know we talked about it, where it's got the little dial. You can actually turn the pressure down.
Oh,
at the quick
yeah,
coupler.
I did for the. Yeah.
That thing is so nice.
Yeah, because before that I just turned the airbrush off, and then and then air was flying all over the place.
Well, and just the fact to turn down the pressure, you got to reach down and get to the compressor and turn it down. Where I'm turning this in a little knob. Stick tuned for a video on that one, guys, because that will be coming out. But we are kind of hitting time here, so final thoughts. Of course, go check out his book, because it's awesome, and I've already picked up at least 7 new concepts myself. But also, Joe, you will be seeing him quite a bit more on the channel, hopefully, here as we keep going and getting more models, and especially as we dip into anything organic. You can bet he'll be popping on for consultations.
Glad to help.
But final thoughts, anybody in the hobby, what's your imparting piece of wisdom for them?
Enjoy it. Have fun. As you know, I had a health problem back in August, and after that, I realized how precious life is, and so now every day I just enjoy the hobby. You just go down, paint. If you do good, you do good. If you don't do good, just enjoy it. You got tomorrow to paint better, but always enjoy today, because you're not sure, if you're not going to have tomorrow.
Because we always have bad days painting, we have good days painting, and
but just be thankful you're painting.
Yep, definitely. And always kind of keep that one thing to keep in mind that I tell a lot of people too is when you're happy with your model, it's done.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah, you could spend years nitpicking.
Yep.
You just got to get to the point, move on to the next one. That's one thing I know it. And I know we have to go, but one of the reasons I switched with oils is oils take forever to dry. So I would spend 3, 4, 5 hours painting a figure's face, just the face. This, and then it's like, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. And then before you know it, I've got a mess, because I've been blending. So when I switched to acrylics, I put a clock. I could paint for 45 minutes, and that was it. Wow. When the 45 minutes got to the face was done. I just had to move on.
Wow.
It may not have been pretty, but I had to move on. So then I started learning, okay, start doing this, and then move on. And then I got a little bit faster. I'm still a slow painter, but I got faster, and I didn't get stuck on just spending hours and hours and hours on painting the face and still not happy with it. Now it's just like, do what you got to do, move to the next thing.
I know that's where a lot of people get hung up is
Trying
it
to be
doesn't look
perfect.
right and trying to look perfect, but the key is does it look good to you? Are you happy with it?
Exactly.
Or is the person that is purchasing it from you, are they happy?
Exactly.
That's what matters. And that's what a good point to end on is always be 1% better, always be thankful that you're getting to paint, and always just go till you're happy, because otherwise you'll never get to move on to the next model. And like you said in the beginning, until you get to go to that next model, you're not going to get any better.
Yeah,
So-
you got to move on from number 1 to get to number 2.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate everybody for coming. If you've stayed this long in the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Again, a big thank you to Joe Hudson for joining us
Thanks for
today.
having me.
And remember, hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions for me or Joe, definitely hit us down in the comments down below. And remember, always hit that like button if you enjoyed what you saw today. And we will see you guys in the next video.